Curious to see where the battle would unfold, I ventured from the shelter of the trees onto the flat rock. A wide and deep landscape stretched before, alive with movement. At the base of Little Round Top flowed Plum Run, and beyond the creek, in a field enclosed by trees and strewn with boulders, soldiers scurried like ants, moving the smaller rocks and cutting trees to make breastworks. As my eye traveled north, I saw the narrow lane from Taneytown Road clogged with horses pulling artillery. Union soldiers spilled from the roadway into the valley like water after a flood. Beyond, the road passed by a wheat field that looked like a gold flag spread on the earth, dotted with moving specks of dark blue. What you're seeing is the left flank of the Union Army, the end of the line that extends nearly 3 miles, General Warren said with a grand gesture of his arm. It makes me proud to see them, sir, I said, but I wish the scene would suddenly freeze into a painting without a single shot being fired. On the ridge beyond Emmitsburg Road, a series of flares followed by white puffs of smoke caught my eye. Seconds later, the booming reached my ears, and I realized that those were the enemy cannons nearly a mile away. The Union cannons fired back. The rebels will try to do as much damage as possible with their artillery before engaging the infantry, explained Mr. Roebling. Look for yourself. He handed me his field glasses, and I gasped as the scene leaped directly before my eyes in precise detail. I saw a shell burst amid a herd of unlucky cattle standing in the creek, which began to flow red from their blood. I watched a team of artillerymen load a cannon, light the fuse, fall back, and the great iron gun rock as it recoiled with the blast. I saw a man idly smoking behind a pile of rocks, and several soldiers struggling to move a wagon with a broken wheel. Follow that lane beyond the wheat field and you'll see where Sickles has put himself sticking out like a sore thumb, Roebling said, stooping slightly and directing my gaze with his outstretched arm. My face inadvertently brushed against the rough nap of his sleeve, and I smelled the sharp tang of woolen sweat, but I didn't draw back, so intent was I on the scene. There they were, the wayward troops, occupying a peach orchard on a rise along the Emmitsburg Road, separated from the rest of the line by a wide gap. A sudden burst of artillery fire came from the orchard. General Warren erupted like an angry cannon. Now that damn fool Sickles is provoking the rebels. They're going to attack before we're ready and collapse the line there. Roebling went to the general's side just as another aide called out, General, look, the rebels' right flank is getting mighty close. Using Roebling's glasses, I peered along the distant ridge until I could make out the gray soldiers moving toward the Emmitsburg Road, about a half a mile south of General Sickles' men in the peach orchard. My hands began to shake, making the scene jump wildly. I went over and gave Roebling his glasses. He took them without even glancing at me. Damn, I didn't know they were this far south. We need men up here now, said General Warren. Mackenzie, get this message to meet at once, he said, scribbling a note and giving it to his aide. I knew I ought to run back to the Weigel house and take refuge inside its fort-like stone walls. But the unfolding battle had seized my attention, rooting me to the spot against my better judgment. Artillery fire now came from all along the distant Confederate line as foot soldiers dashed towards the Emmitsburg Road. I could faintly hear them yelping like a pack of hunting dogs. Cannons in the wheat field and the boulder-strewn meadow flared in reply, and the rebels began to drop in their tracks. I covered my ears against the deafening noise. Soon smoke obscured the field, and I knew only that a blue-gray mass of men had melted together below me. General Warren paced back and forth on the large rock. Damn Sickles forever, I heard him say as the rebel guns pounded exposed troops in the peach orchard. I couldn't blame him for cursing. It looked as if the Union line might give away, letting the enemy sweep through the entire valley. Good God, Miss Allbauer, what are you still doing here? Warren shouted at me. He was immediately distracted again. Roebling, I think Law's brigade is headed straight for that hill. I don't know if our sharpshooters down there can hold them off. He motioned to where the end of the Confederate line was approaching Big Round Top. We've got to hold them there. He pointed to the rocky field below, where hundreds of our soldiers hunkered down behind breastworks shooting at the rebels. Already bodies lay scattered on the ground. We call that the Devil's Den, I said, but my voice came out as a horse croak, and no one heard me. Okay, so that's a scene of battle there. And the last scene I'm going to read you is on the third day of battle, the famous infamous Pickett's Charge. And this time, the perspective is Rosanna's, and she is behind Confederate lines as Pickett's Charge gets underway. She's writing about it later on in the evening because she can't write on the spot. July 3rd, 8 p.m. My pen is heavy with the weight of this tragic history. Writing is a struggle, but words are all I have to paint the horrors of this day. The artillery barrage this afternoon lasted 2 hours but seemed endless. From time to time the guns stuttered into silence, only to roar again to life. My ears were deafened and my nerves frayed from the constant thunder. Even the horses were driven mad and broke from their tethers, plunging riderless through the fields, until many were struck and killed. I watched the team of gunners struggle to reset their cannon as it sank into the soft ground with each recoil, sending missiles beyond their targets on the far ridge. And by the way, at this point, Lizzie is beyond the far ridge, going back to Gettysburg because she thinks the battle's over. And so then the shelling breaks out, and she's over there with shells falling all around her. A sudden blast threw the gunners to the ground where they lay unmoving. I started forward with my satchel of medicine. Langan grabbed my skirt, but I shook him off. Death was claiming good soldiers every minute, and my life was no more precious than theirs. I ran through the knee-high grass toward the line of flame-belching cannons, stopping only to let a caisson loaded with ammunition roll by. Its driver gave me a startled look. Langan and the other fellow had followed me, and they quickly bore away the gunner with the worst wounds. I supported the second one as he hobbled back to the grove of trees, and the third was able to crawl to shelter. I treated their blistered skin with tallow. Langan brought a soldier after wounded soldier to my triage station, where I dispensed what aid I could, so intent upon my work that I barely flinched when a Yankee shell hit the ground nearby. It dislodged great clods of earth, but fortunately did no further harm to my patients. I looked up to see a man walking slowly toward me, a large piece of iron shrapnel protruding from his breastbone. To my astonishment, he was not even bleeding. His mouth opened and closed as if he were trying to speak, and he pointed to his chest. I thought of a statue of Christ holding his heart that I once saw in the Catholic Church in Richmond. I touched the metal, but realized that if I tried to remove it, he would probably bleed to death. I'm not making this up. I read this in a letter about the Civil War. Langan had already gone, so I advised the man to take himself to the hospital. It pained me not to be able to help him. It was about mid-afternoon, judging by the sun's decline, when the situation on the field began to change. First, the artillery fire sputtered. Officers and couriers galloped back and forth behind the guns with a sense of urgency. Langan asked to borrow my field glasses. "I see Longstreet conferring with his artillery commander," he reported. "We must be almost out of ammunition. If we don't attack now, our men will be going forward without any covering fire." He seemed very agitated. "I don't understand. If there's no more ammunition, how can the battle go on?" Langan didn't reply. He continued to scan the field. "The Union batteries are pulling back. They've stopped firing. My God, what is Longstreet waiting for?" Just then General Pickett rode by on his black horse, shouting, "Up, men, and to your posts! Don't forget today that you are Virginians." The infantry began to roll forward from the woods. The standard bearers of every regiment and company raised their colors. Seeing the blue flag of Virginia waving in the hot breeze, I joined my voice to the rising cheer. Then the thousands of men, forming an unbroken line almost a mile long, began their advance. The sun was at their backs, casting long shadows before them and glinting off their bayonets and rifle barrels. They advanced in silence. Their ranks parted as they approached a battery of guns or a dead horse, then closed up again, like a river flowing around a rock. Long minutes passed before the artillery resumed their covering fire, and the men advanced with the sound of their own guns at their backs. They did not look back. I watched the inexorable tide flow down the grassy slope. The soldiers marched with steady, measured steps over the mile of open ground. No one cheered any longer, and my excitement at seeing their march commence turned to dread as they neared the enemy's lines. I realized that the artillery bombardment had been only a prelude to this more deadly stage of battle. When the leading column had traversed half the distance between the two lines, the Yankee guns opened their fire again, raining shot and shell upon our brave soldiers. Though they fell like ninepins, the line moved on. Those on the flanks lagged a little, and the straight line took the shape of a crescent. Like a blunted arrow, our soldiers converged on the center of the Yankee line. Fire from the Yankee guns raked them from the side, and dozens fell, disappearing in the tall grass. As the men slowed down to climb over the fences along Emmitsburg Road, Yankee sharpshooters picked them off. But the lines reformed, and the men advanced at a doubled pace, uttering battle cries that floated back to us on the wind. Then, as Pickett's brave Virginians came within 100 yards of the enemy's breastworks, the Yankee rifles fired simultaneously with a deafening crack, and the mini balls did their precise and deadly work. In the open fields, men fell like wheat cut with a scythe, but the remainder marched on, undaunted by the certainty of death. I could no longer bear to watch, but laid down my field glasses, and the scene became a distant blur of movement and smoke. I busied myself treating wounds while for an hour the clash continued. Then the sounds of battle suddenly changed, and peering through my glasses again, I saw our men stumbling, running, and crawling away from the point of battle. Some held up handkerchiefs or caps as if they were surrendering. Yet others persevered, gaining the wall and fighting up the hill until they were driven back with bayonets. Soon I had little doubt that the valiant Virginians were in full retreat. Alas, my disappointment was nothing compared to that of the soldiers who straggled back, their bodies broken and defeat written on their faces. Among them I looked for Tom, but in vain, for every man's face was blackened with dirt and powder. Hammer and Watt stopped, seeing that my aid station was overwhelmed, and helped Langan carry the wounded to ambulances. As I write, hundreds of bodies still lie on the field, and the stretcher bearers pick their way among the fallen, seeking those who have a chance of living. The others they leave to die. So it's a grim place to leave you, I know, but rest assured that this is not the end. And I will say that our heroines do survive the battle, and not without scars. And the book closes with the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg and Abraham Lincoln delivering the Gettysburg Address. Again, the girls are witnesses to this, and so inspired by the speech that they come away from it sort of with their eyes and their steps facing a future. So, anyway, thank you very much.